they've done like excessive cardio, excessive amounts of training. They either don't have the time or the capacity because they have children now, and they're fatigued from life, and they're not seeing the body fat come down from doing these aggressive diets that they used to. Remember when you were 20 and you would feel completely fine from drinking alcohol? It's because your ability to recover from things is impaired with your aging. I think what I'm seeing more of, which I like, is that people are reflecting more on the long term. And I think now just women are more aware of what it really means to take care of yourself. We don't want someone to just be occasionally great. We want to stay consistently good.
Walking an hour a day should be a non-negotiable.
Yes.
Regardless of where you're at in your training, regardless of whether you ran an Ironman yesterday, you still walk an hour a day.
Lifestyle and just like meeting your baselines go such a long way. And if you have the capacity to add to that and go beyond your baselines and do these supplementary things, I think that's awesome.
If you ask most men who lift heavy in the gym to run 1 mile, they'll be like, there's absolutely no way I can run
Yes.
1 mile. There's an old phrase that we don't rise to our expectations, we fall to the level of our systems. That's a few clips from our guest today, Tiana Daly. And before we get started, I wanted to ask you a quick question. Do you struggle with getting enough nutrition, nutrient-dense foods in your diet? If you're anything like me, I sure did, and that's why I invented the Sprout Spout. I'd love it if you could check it out. It's sproutspout.com. All you have to do is put in the code CE, as in Chasing Energy, and you'll get a special discount. Thank you so much for being supportive of this podcast and leaving a review. Tiana, welcome to Chasing Energy. We're going to talk about women's health today and some of your specialties with coaching. Thank you for being
Absolutely.
here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. Don't often have the fitness women. I've had several holistic doctors and things like that. So I'm actually quite excited to hear what you have to say today. When you think about the clients that you are most specialized or niched in, who do you think of?
So for me in particular, I work with women who have been active previously. And, many women in kind of like that millennial age have done a lot of fitness classes and dieting and things like that to kind of get skinny and lose weight in their 20s. So a lot of the women that come to me now are moms like myself and late 30s, early 40s. The old stuff now is not working for them. So they've done like excessive cardio, excessive amounts of training. They either don't have the time or the capacity because they have children now, and they're fatigued from life, and they're not seeing the body fat come down from doing these aggressive diets that they used to. So these are the women that tend to come to me and say, okay, I want to do things differently. I want to work with my body differently and approach training and nutrition differently than I used to.
Do you find that part of it is as people age, the sort of, and I'm classifying the term yo-yo diets or the crash diet, it's that the residual effects, almost like the hangovers, are more pronounced after 40?
Exactly. Yes. So we just don't recover like we used to. And this is where a lot of the trouble comes in getting those results. And the hangover thing is exactly how I describe it to people. I'm like, remember when you were 20 and you would feel completely fine from drinking alcohol? It's because your ability to recover from things is impaired with your aging. And to your point, this is what we're seeing with people and their fat loss and muscle gain.
Yeah. So let's talk about when they come to you, what type of approach in this particular way? What's the foundation that you start?
Yeah. So it's a lot of unlearning. Like I was mentioning before, these women have usually tried, like you exercise to like get skinny and then you reduce your food to get skinny. And then, they do typically want to lose some body fat, and that's kind of like their first goal. But the way we approach things is we don't just want to lose fat in 6 weeks or 4 weeks and get shredded for the beach. And they know that that's not sustainable as well. So we really focus on optimizing.
Deep down, they may know it. But often the case is once I lose this, then I'll start eating healthy and all those things. Just help me get the 10 pounds off, and then we can talk about living a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah. Sometimes people are like, that's when they reach their breaking point, is usually when it's like a vacation or they can't fit in their pants. Like now, the fall, right? Like people say it was a summer of indulgence and that kind of thing. But I think what I'm seeing more of, which I like, is that people are reflecting more on the long term. And I think now just women are more aware of what it really means to take care of yourself. Whereas previously, it was like women need to be small and skinny and we can't lift heavy weights. And anyway, what we do initially is to get women in these habits that are going to promote health in their 40s and beyond. So we start off with a base of strength with strength training. We acclimate the
Yeah.
body to building more muscle, doing those compound lifts. I help women unlearn the things they've been taught about that more is better, more sweating is better. The more that you're like feeling your muscles burning, it means that it's an effective workout. And we do less and we do it better so that you're actually recovering better and building more muscle. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to the food, like, a lot of the time it's not so much they don't have the perfect intake on paper. Or they've never heard of like, hey, I need to be in a calorie deficit. It's that their eating patterns are not in line with sustainable fat loss. So, a lot of these women will
Right.
be like sick of, being overweight or like they packed on weight or whatever. And then, oh, they're not going to eat all day. They're going to do fasting or they go on these yo-yo diets and then they end up binging later or raiding the cupboard at night. And, they're really getting nowhere. They're just under eating and they're overtraining. So what we do is just set up a consistent eating pattern where they're having protein
Yeah.
consistently, they're in a calorie deficit, but they're eating high volume foods. So that's where we start.
Wonderful. I love it. Sustainable inertia. Create the habits for sustainable long-term inertia. When you talk about a meal plan, do you subscribe to like was it 0.7 grams per pound or is it two grams of protein per kilo, something like that?
Yep, exactly. So we stick at around like zero 0.8 grams of protein to 1 gram per pound. If anyone is hearing the zero 0.8 per kilogram stat that's floating around, that is what the government has kind of determined is the minimum people need to so if you're active and you're
Yeah.
actively trying to build and maintain muscle, which you should be, and you are if you're over 40,
Mhm.
then yeah, we want to stick to zero 0.8 to 1 gram per pound.
Yeah, I like that. And it becomes more critical after 40, the actual ratio. This is why when I get the question about vegetarian diets, I go, it's a lot easier before you're 40 to have a little bit of muscle naturally and not have to worry about protein. It becomes more complex after
Mhm.
40. These are great. So let's talk about perimenopause. How do you structure diet and exercise for women who are experiencing that?
That's such a good question because I talk about this a lot. The same stuff that works to build muscle and to build a healthy metabolism and to look good and lose body fat still applies in perimenopause. It's just more important. During this time, recovery will typically be reduced because of the fluctuations in estrogen and your hormones are shifting.
Yeah.
Women might have trouble sleeping. Their sleep cycles are affected. That's going to affect their hunger levels. It's going to affect the way that they're able to move their body. By and large, we promote these lifestyle habits that are going to encourage more rest, more recovery, and health promoting eating patterns. For my clients in perimenopause, again, we're still prioritizing protein, like we mentioned, eating mostly whole foods. So, 90% of the diet that we recommend our clients have is going to come from one ingredient foods because these are going to make you feel better. You're going to have better digestion, better performance in the gym. But it's not to say that we need to cut out, certain foods or eliminate them for any reason. And then the main thing that I would say, tweak when it comes to the perimenopausal period is going to be really consolidating the amount of time that we're spending on training and how we're doing that. Because
Right.
again, when women are in their 20s or younger and they might have less lifestyle commitments and they're not affected by these hormonal shifts and all the rest, they might be able to do these very lengthy classes or tons of cardio, and it does catch up to you. So we don't want someone to just be occasionally great. We want to stay consistently good. So in other words, we're trying to stay in the long game. This is when our clients benefit the most from like shaving down the amount of time they're spending on their training a week, doing maybe 3 to 4 hours a week, moving every day for sure, like prioritizing walking. That's a given. I think everybody should
Yeah.
be walking. That's separate from like, structured exercise. We really zero in on getting them to learn how to train at the right intensity so that they can spend less time and get better results.
Yeah. I'm going to add a couple
Mhm.
things to what you said, mostly just agreeing with you. But when I hear the term off day, like, okay, how many days am I on? The first thing that I generally tell people is look, an off day for me, or probably for most people, should not be I am sitting on the
Yes.
couch. It means you're not doing strength training or pushing yourself, on a long run. But walking an hour a day should be a non-negotiable.
Yes.
I think at least 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes even regardless of where you're at in your training, regardless of whether you ran an Ironman yesterday, you still walk an hour a day. It will actually help you recover
Yes,
quicker.
you're speaking my language. I completely agree. Like we've gotten in a society where I think people unfortunately see walking as something that's kind of like seen as a separate kind of form of exercise.
Yeah. I'm not burning enough calories while I'm doing that, so I don't wanna do it. Yeah. something like that. But as you know, if you walk 3 miles or you run 3 miles, it's the same amount of calories. So just, yeah, it takes longer, but you can enjoy it a little more. The other thing I'll add is, especially as someone who's very experienced with being over 40, I have been cold plunging for a while. And I will tell you, it definitely attacks the inflammation in the morning when you're a little stiff and sore. And then the second thing is I started about a year ago, I started hitting the sauna about 3 days a week. And I noticed it gave me a recovery edge. I was able to recover about 20% faster than normal if I just hit this. And it wasn't until I've been going regularly for about 2 or 3 weeks. But there's a lot of studies with how human growth hormone is released when you're in a sauna session. So when I think of individuals who are saying, I just can't recover, I go, there's actually some things you can do where you're in a sauna sitting there, and I promise you, if you sit in a sauna for 20 minutes, you're gonna get out and feel like you basically had a light aerobic
Mhm.
session. So there's things you can do where you're not actually pushing your body, but you're doing an active recovery, whether it be walking, sauna, or cold.
I love that. And I personally have not delved into this as often at the moment, but to your point, anything that you can do to add to your recovery and give you that edge, I absolutely support that.
Mhm.
I think sauna's fantastic. We do Epsom salt baths pretty regularly. I think that one's kind of more
Mhm.
accessible because not a lot of my clients are going to have the
Yeah.
access to it. But I'm curious to know, like, how
Yeah.
often would you recommend someone try that? You said 3 times a week?
Yes, in fact, I'm not as big a fan as the infrared saunas because there's not a lot of studies behind them, but the traditional dry Nordic barrel sauna, which I bought one at Costco
Yeah.
and assembled it, but 3 days a week, 20-minute sessions, and I stole this one from, Huberman, but if you want, like, a real, like, intense recovery session, I can vouch for this. It works tremendously, and that is this: on your off day, do 15 to 20 minutes in the sauna, followed by 5 minutes in the cold plunge, and do that 3 times. And it's an hour and a half. But when you come out of a sauna into a cold plunge, is that it doesn't feel that cold because your core temperature is so high. About 2 or 3 hours after that, you're going to feel like, man, I am ready to take. I feel like my body has just kicked into overdrive and recovered. So it's hard for me but when I do something like that, I come out of it and I go, man, now I'm ready to tackle tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you sound like someone who's very, like you said, you have to kind of restrain yourself from taking a rest day almost sometimes. Like you like to have an active recovery. I find a lot of the women that I work with, sometimes if they are not as consistent with their fitness routine, they can sometimes focus on like shiny red balls, as I call them. So, like,
Yeah.
what I tell my clients is listen, this is the baseline of things that you want to be doing to make sure that you're feeling tip top. So, for example, I know
Mhm.
one of my clients I'm thinking of, she was having some kind of a consistent aches and pains and feeling fatigued and having like these cravings. And then we looked a little closer and she actually wasn't like really consistent with hitting her protein, with tracking her food. And her sleep was actually quite poor because she was going to bed really late. So I said, listen, you can do all the supplementary stuff, but until we have your protein and your sleep and your morning sunlight and, your like basic things that you're doing between your sessions, that you're not going to be able to recover optimally. And, like you said, especially when you're over 40, mid 40s and 50s, you want to give yourself that edge. So I think what I want people to know is that lifestyle and just like meeting your baselines go such a long way. And if you have the capacity to add to that and go beyond your baselines and do these supplementary things, I think that's awesome. But I think everybody should be walking for sure every day, not just on the training day. I recommend at least 10,000 steps a day and drinking water, like drinking several liters of water a day, getting adequate sleep, sleeping in a dark room, eating adequate protein, and strength training, of course. So across the board, I would recommend these things to everybody.
Oh, these are fantastic pillars, Tiana. This is incredible information you're offering people. When you train, can you give us an insight of what your breakdown is in terms of how many strength trainings a week and then how much cardio you do as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went through a period where I actually kind of was demonizing cardio because I had done it so much in my younger years as a way to lose weight that I
Yeah.
wasn't doing it for a long
Yeah.
time. And I recently started running, which I actually started enjoying just for the actual aerobic benefit versus like burning calories. So I was running about like 4 days a week. So I was running probably about like 20 kilometers or so a week. And now it's probably like around 10, broken up into a couple
Mhm.
days. And I strength train 4 days a week. I find that's a good cadence for me consistently. And I've really been
Yeah.
enjoying full body training splits. This is something that I actually really advocate for a lot of my clients. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I find I can recover really well and I can really target like multiple muscle groups consistently. So that's been working well for me.
Okay. Give us an example of a full body training split.
Absolutely. So typically I do like up to 5 exercises per workout, and then it'll be like 2 lower body lifts, 2 upper body, and then 1 typically like core exercise or conditioning, or like I really like to play around with kettlebells.
Do you factor in push pull?
Yes.
Or
Yeah, I do. Typically, like I focus on more pull than push because I like to bias my posterior chain. I'm trying to build more muscle strength in that area, especially in the lower body. But I think for most people, they should prioritize more pull because the push muscles are already so overactive. And people's posterior chain, like their glutes and back, tend to be weaker, which is why a lot of people have back pain. Our posture these days is definitely attributing to that. But yes, that's what I personally do.
I love it. All right. So I interrupted you because I was curious, but you were talking about your split there. So give me, you said you do 4 days. Give me an example.
Well, I am a leg loving girl because it's funny. I always tried to like shrink my legs when I was younger, and now I'm trying to very much
Yes.
grow some muscle here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I train them pretty often. I do bias the glutes. So staples I have and variations of them will be Bulgarian split squats. I love a good barbell squat. I like a barbell squat
Yeah.
just because I like it. I just enjoy it. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Deadlifts, same thing. I just like lifting heavy in that movement. I'll do RDLs, 45-degree hypers. And I don't know if I said hip thrust, but that's definitely one of my top ones. So those are my leg heavy
Okay.
hitters.
And most of those, except for maybe the back squat, but you can do those at home with dumbbells. I think probably my number one go to leg movement is Bulgarian split squats. And it doesn't take a lot of weight on one leg for you to get a great workout. And depending on where your back is in the position, you can focus on glutes versus quads, which I really like as
I
well.
love that you're doing that, by the way. I think it's so awesome when it's funny because some men will not train glutes or think that's like our legs or like, there's that whole,
Yeah, the problem I see in most men is that they focus on the heavy movements, so a back
Mhm.
squat or leg extensions and things like that. And what I find is they don't have a lot of mobility. They don't have a lot of agility. If you ask most men who lift heavy in the gym to run 1 mile, they'll be like, "There's absolutely no way I can run
Yes.
1 mile." So for me, it's about practicing for being 80 and 90 and still being agile. So I will tell you, I do run probably 3 or 4 days a week, even on my lifting days. And for me, it's probably as much about mental health as it is physical health because I usually run in the woods.
Nice.
So that to me that's my time out. That's my time in nature. It- the last few years, it's even rare that I'll even take headphones into the
Wow.
woods with me because I just want that. I want that clarity, the quiet, something I normally would have not done growing up because I would think I could be learning right now. I could be listening to an
Yes.
audiobook. And now I put a big value, Tiana, on there's nothing coming in. It's just my thoughts, which is probably why I think the sauna is such a healthy thing is I don't take my phone in there. I just take a little book and my, you know, I almost want to say like parasympathetic. Your parasympathetic system really winds down in the sauna if you give it the opportunity. It's very easy to go to bed after that because your body's just done at that point. A lot of
See, I need to
stimulation.
take some of your advice there, Daniel, because I feel like I definitely have an overstimulated, tightly wound brain naturally. So I think that it's really
Yeah.
healthy, mentally to have that balance for sure.
Well, you spoke to this early in the interview, which is what we see and what is pushed on us is this that you're constantly missing out if you're not being involved. So in your case, you mentioned, a lot of these women see these diets, they see these quick results, and they go, I just want to get this result. Well, especially when it comes to the phones and the social media, there is a tendency when you wake up to be like, man, I need to check and see what I missed out on while I was asleep. And I discovered about myself, if I check that phone, I'm not going to journal.
Yes.
So if I don't journal, then I'm not as thoughtful with my day. And then at the end of the day, I generally have more regret that I didn't take that time. So I feel that just like everyone else, I feel that urge to grab my phone in the morning and go, all right, let's see how many likes or let's see if I got that email back I was wanting. Or
Sets the tone.
you've already set the tone and whatever methodical insights that you developed while you were asleep. will be gone by the time you see the flashing
I love
lights.
that point you made. I want to add too that the morning is such a great opportunity to stack those wins, which is why I think,
Oh,
I know you're kind on that exact same wavelength. I think this is where a lot of people could really get an upper edge, whether that be their
yeah.
fitness. I always tell my clients
Mhm.
there's no magic to working out in the first thing per se, but if you're trying to build
Yeah.
momentum, you want to be prioritizing the things you want to build momentum with. So I think that that's a really important thing because a lot of people are chasing their day. They're waking up late.
Yeah.
If they have young kids, they're just chasing after their kids, go, go, go as soon
Mhm.
as they start their day. And then it's just so much easier to not get momentum because your mind is already in that frantic state.
Yeah, Tiana, the vast majority of people, when you first start talking to them, are gonna say something like, "I wanna train, but I'm not a morning person," to which I go, "Yeah, there's a group for that, it's called everybody." You do it in the morning because there's no one calling you at 5:30 AM asking for your time, and when you put it off to later, you've stacked the odds against you that you are going to get to that workout. So it's really just a question of how bad do you want it?
Yes.
Is this important to you? Are you willing to set the alarm to do this? Then do it. Otherwise, you're playing roulette with your schedule, with your fitness.
You know what? I'm a little bit tough love. Like I kind of call myself tough love T because my clients are like, you're such a straight
Yeah.
shooter. But I tell them, I'm like, that's something my kids would say to me. I'm not a morning person, but what do I tell them? You just got to do it. Like you said, like if everybody's feeling the same thing, it's a matter of what you're going to take action on. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that you need to act a certain way.
Yeah. I was in the cold plunge this morning. I usually have these thoughts when I'm sitting in there, and it's not nearly as miserable as it sounds. I actually quite enjoy it. But I was sitting in there, and when a friend comes over and sees me going, it's like 39. So it's legit cold. And I had this thought in my head because people see that, I don't know, a video of me or they see the cold plunge and they think, you have so much grit. You're so stoic. Da, da, da. And I thought to myself, I swear this is the thought I had this morning. I was sitting there and I said, I'm not in here because I am Jocko or David Goggins or any of those others. I'm in here because I know deep down I'm not that person. And if I don't do this, I lose my
Mm.
edge. So I just came to the reality. I was like, I do this to keep my edge. It's not that I naturally am the kind of person who needs an extreme thing to feel
Man,
whole.
I love that. That's such a good insight. I think that that's an important point too. Like it's something you build over time. It's not something you need to be born with.
Well, Tiana, they see you and they think it's easy for you. You're in shape and da 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 da.
Well, exactly. And I always tell people that too. The goal is to ascend to an identity built around movement and fitness. And sometimes that
Yeah.
feels daunting for people, but I think people do want that deep down. I have to remind myself too that I've been doing fitness since I was a young adult and working in the industry for quite some time now that I almost don't realize that for a lot of people, this is not an area of their life that
Yeah.
they're consistent with. Right now, it feels like an uphill battle because you have your existing lifestyle. You need to change that because it's led you to be unhappy, out of shape, and wanting to make a change. And ultimately, the
Mhm.
goal is that you're not only doing this because you have to, but because you enjoy it. It's a part of who you are. Like when I go on vacation, I'm not thinking, oh, I can't wait to not work out or not move my body and eat chips and, drink alcohol. Like I
Yeah.
can't wait to explore fitness in different areas. And to some people, that sounds extreme, but I tell them, you're working toward a point where you're not thinking of this as an everyday fight with yourself, a part of
Yeah.
who you are.
It's a gift to
Mhm.
yourself, and this usually upsets people when I tell them this, but I cannot stand it when people are like, "Well, I ran today, so I treated myself to ice cream." And it's the idea there is never put a reward that's counterintuitive to the challenge you're overcoming. So if you're trying to become healthy and you reward yourself with ice cream, all you're essentially doing is saying, "I'm willing to be miserable to get that ice cream." And it creates a very unbalanced approach to you're just relying on your willpower, which we know is fleeting,
Mhm.
right? It's those habits, those rituals, the foundations that you mentioned that are sustainable, where you're not totally relying on your willpower. There's an old phrase that we don't rise to our expectations, we fall to the level of our systems.
Mm.
So your systems are the people who, hint, hint, one of the most common habits among health nuts are pre-made meals,
Yes.
meaning they on Sunday, they pre-plan out their meals for the week. Why? Because you don't have to rely on willpower. Once that's done, you don't have to go to the office and go, I'll just grab something
Mhm.
while I'm out, which is you're opening yourself up there. This is your
No,
interview.
I love it.
You Got it. So where can people learn more about you and get in touch?
So I'm most active on Instagram, Coach Tiana Daly. And here I drop a ton of value, freebies. You can connect with me there. And I also have a Facebook group, Strength Training and Muscle Building for Women. And I do a weekly live training in there.
Mhm. And so you reach out through I checked out your website, then there's a discovery call session in there, and then you work with people on building structure on sustainable inertia for a lifetime of wellness and health.
Exactly. So the people that I like to work with, especially at this point, I want to make sure that you're ready to make a consistent lifestyle change. It's not just something you want to do for a short-term diet.
Vacation, wedding,
Exactly. Yep.
yes.
So you got to be aligned with playing the long game and doing things differently and setting yourself up for aging better. So this is who I like to work with.
All right. I love that we'll end on that note, setting yourself up for aging better with
Yeah.
Tiana.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.